Live from New York, the most in-depth awards show on the planet, the 2018 Trading Blows Awards, with your hosts Richard Donahue and Nathan Evans.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the first annual Trading Blows Awards for 2018. Nate, hope you had a fantastic holiday, buddy.
I did have a fantastic holiday. I hope you did too. And I'm excited to sit here and celebrate the great year we had of 2018. It was a fantastic year on many fronts, and I can't wait to get into it.
So for our first Trading Blows Award for 2018, we're going to start with the guys that made a hot entrance onto the scene. You know, they may have been fighting beforehand, but this is when you really took notice of these guys. And the nominees for Breakout of the Fighter of the Year are
Zabit Magomed-Shapirov, Aaron Pico, Anthony Smith, Israel Adesanya.
All four of these fighters are well deserving of this award. It can only go to one of these people, obviously, but all four of them had fantastic years. Zabit Magomed-Sharipov had a fantastic year. He showed us things we'd never seen before. I had never even heard of this person before, and he's making a splash on this scene with the Kyle Bochniak decision, the Brandon Davis submission, an incredible submission, by the way, something that you'll maybe never even see again in the octagon. Anthony Smith had an incredible year as well. He suffered a tough loss to Thiago Santos early on, but then he rallied back and defeated Rashad Evans in June. 6 weeks later, knocked out Mauricio Shogun Rua, one of the most brutal finishes of recent memory. Followed that up with an impressive win over Volkan Ozdemir in a fight where he was actually in trouble early on, but then rallied to get the win. And here he is, lined up, ready for the title fight against John Jones. Who would have thought that would have been happening at this time last year? Certainly not me.
Aaron Pico, Bellator's Golden Boy, was premiered at Great Fanfare 2017, and despite losing in Madison Square Garden in front of a very large audience, obviously heavily hyped, he's gone on to win 4 wins in a row, 3 in 2018, all with finishes, all first-round finishes for Aaron Pico. He's really showing you in 2018 all of that hype is really coming to fruition. He has a big fight coming up in 19. We can't wait to see him. And the winner for Trading Blows Breakout Fighter of the Year goes to
Israel Adesanya.
Israel Adesanya has burst onto the scene, well deserving of a Breakout Fighter of the Year, and has shown remarkable striking acumen, and now showing a real flair for the camera. He's out there, man. Everywhere you look, you're seeing Israel. He is going to be the next big thing in mixed martial arts for sure.
Israel Adesanya had 4 wins last year, and some of these names weren't as big as some of the other names that we've seen, but 4 victories is something to be commendable regardless. The man is
exciting wins too, Nate.
Exciting wins. I mean, the Derek Brunson, knees and punches TKO. I mean, I thought that Adesanya was going to have his hands full in that fight, and he clearly did not have his hands full, in any way whatsoever. The guy's 15-0. Like you said, he's the next big thing in mixed martial arts, and something that I think separates him from the rest of those nominees, as great as they are, is that as of right now, Adesanya looks unstoppable. He looks like the future champion. He looks like he's going to hold that belt for a while. I love Robert Whittaker, but I don't like his chances against Adesanya. And at this time last year, I didn't even know who Adesanya was.
He's really not only has Adesanya become such a big star in general, he's also putting city kickboxing on the map as well. Dan Hooker, Volkansky, this group is really coming out to be a strong camp led by Israel Adesanya. So you're seeing every facet of the game here, a well-deserved win for Breakout Fighter of the Year. Next we have Story of the Year. Story of the Year is basically what story was the most important story in MMA that really dominated the landscape of the news cycle in 2018. The nominees for Story of the Year are
Khabib jumps the cage following the Conor fight. Demetrius Johnson Ben Askren trade. The Conor bus incident. UFC 232 moved on a week's notice.
The DJ Askren trade was so significant and almost opens the world up to, could this be more of like your Major League Baseballs and your NFLs, where you're actually having a hostile situation? I don't personally believe that could happen, but the imagination ran wild with this. You have 2 legendary fighters finally getting to fight where they want to go. You're moving a pound-for-pound great in DJ out now. He's cleaned out the division. Lost to Cejudo, but now he feels there's nothing left. He's going to go make something happen in ONE FC. Ben Askren has been, the top of his division for years, and there's always the question, what would he do in the UFC? And finally, we're going to figure that out.
The UFC 232 being moved on a week's notice was something that has the recency bias because it just happened last week, and it's something that we've never even seen before. Something that I didn't even know if it was even possible to pull off logistically. And it was extremely unfair to all the fans, the families, the fighters. There was a complaints by the fighters that now they're losing money due to the tax situation between Nevada and California. These people are getting robbed, it feels. And this is all for one person and one person only, and that's John Jones.
100%. John Jones, it's really, regardless of what you feel about the whole picogram and is he cheating or is the science right? Is it a cover up? However you want to look at it, the bottom line is they're making a lot of logistical moves for one guy, and that's a bad look on him and the rest of the division. John Jones, big star, huge, GOAT contender, fantastic athlete, but with all the problems he's had, this is not the best way to come back in 2018. And the winner of Story of the Year is
Khabib Jumps the Cage.
Khabib Jumping the Cage was during the biggest UFC event of the year. We had one of the, the best moments and also one of the worst with seeing Khabib jump in the cage, the talk of Conor and the disrespect finally get to him when you're seeing that in a raw emotional thing that he hasn't apologized for yet. And the ramifications of that are still ongoing.
Khabib Jumping the Cage was an unprecedented act during one of the biggest events in the sport's history. Never before have we ever seen someone do anything like this, and certainly not anything like this from one of the most recognizable fighters on the planet. It all seemed too surreal. It seemed hard to believe like it was really happening, and there was nothing scripted or fake about it. This was pure violence and chaos.
Bottom line is, the talk clearly got to Khabib, and where you could have had a true opportunity to show sportsmanship and class that Khabib has really been showing up until the fight really boiled over for him. And nobody's perfect, but in the end, the ramifications of that are still ongoing. Our next award for 2018 Trading Blows Awards is Best Promo. This is the best trash-talking, best soundbite of the year. And the nominees for Best Promo of the Year are
How's Noah? Conor McGregor.
Shoot you, man. Ali Abdulaziz, my terrorist snitch. I know a lot about you as well, you mad rat. I know a lot about you as well. You keep your mouth shut, kid. Let me take my picture. How's Noah? How's Noah, huh? Yeah, shut your mouth. Never speak about me.
Oscar De La Coquette. Dana White.
First of all, let's say this first. I heard last week the cokehead, Oscar De La Weirdo.
Looking for a cowboy, Mike Perry.
Let me find that cowboy. This is a gym of platinum warriors. Only the strongest can survive here in this facility.
Making the welterweight division great again, Colby Covington.
He's hiding. He's been ducking everybody in the division. He doesn't want to fight. I'm here to make the division great again. And you know what I'm going to do by making the division great again? I'm going to the White House. I'm putting this on Donald Trump's desk.
And the winner for Best Promo of the Year is
Making the Welterweight Division Great Again by Colby Covington.
This man, I got to tell you about this promo, Nate. You know what? I don't like Colby Covington, but you know what? This was peak Colby Covington. He showed a lot of wit. And honestly, I got to admit, I dislike the gimmick in a big way, but this was very, very funny. Reminded me of big-time heel promos from WWF.
I have to give him credit where credit's due. I do not care for Colby Covington. I'd be happy if he never even won again. But this is brilliant. All of these are very deserving of the nomination, but to me, this is a clear-cut winner because it's clever, it's creative, it makes the point, and it gets everyone's attention. Everyone knew about this when it happened. Maybe for the right or wrong reasons, maybe because they hated it, maybe because they loved it, but they noticed. The nominees for Comeback Fighter of the Year are
Al Iaquinta, Michael Chandler, Max Holloway, John Bones Jones.
All these fighters are well-deserving of the Comeback Player of the Year. You have Al Iaquinta, who really, wasn't on a lot of fans' radars. And honestly, a lot of people had negative feelings about Iaquinta with how he's acted before, kind of a divish thing. But how he stepped up against Khabib with like less than 24 hours notice and gave a game, humble performance, really put a lot of guys on notice with Al Iaquinta. And then to come back later in a top 5 situation and defeat Kevin Lee when he was a big underdog, what was an amazing situation for him. And really, he's looking at a top 3, and he has a strong argument for a title shot. He wouldn't get the title shot. Obviously, we know this, but the fact that he went from being almost out of UFC, selling real estate, to now talking about possible title shot or big money fight, there's no question Al Iaquinta should be nominated.
John Jones, we all know as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, mixed martial arts fighters of all time. At one time, he was thought to become the next LeBron James, as Dana White once said. But his career went off the rails, whether for various reasons, including drug use, steroid use, criminal activity. And we didn't know if he was ever really going to come back and fight again. We didn't know if the commissions were going to let him come back and fight, if he was going to have to go somewhere else and fight. But he came back. He had the big victory over Gus, where Gus wasn't even close in that fight, I don't think. And now John Jones says he wants to fight 3 or 4 times this year. And here we have the fight lined up with Anthony Smith coming up in March. We expect to see him fight again and again. John Jones is back.
Next, we have Michael Chandler. Michael Iron Chandler is well-deserved of a nomination as well for Comeback of the Year. This gentleman lost at NYC with a freak leg injury. One of the Bellator's best. He's been one of the Bellator staples for years, multiple-time champion. And then he went on to win 3 matches in a row, winning back his title and setting and destroying many records in MMA and Bellator for the lightweight division in general. Michael Chandler, once again, proves that he is one of the top in the division when many thought his career was done at this time last year.
And the winner for Comeback Fighter of the Year is
Max Holloway. The bottom line with Max Holloway here is the medical issues. As we've mentioned before, this gentleman, there is a strong hive mind who thought that he would never fight again with all the medical problems he has. And to be honest, the medical issues he was dealing with in 2018, people still don't understand what really happened there. And that's a scary situation. And despite all that, he fought Brian Ortega in one of the best fights of 2018, in a fantastic fight where he really dominated in one of his best performances. And this is a man who's defeated greats like Jose Aldo. And this was his best performance despite all the odds. And there's no question that he deserves to be the Comeback Player of the Year.
Well, at this time last year, we didn't know if Max Holloway was even going to fight again. We were concerned about his health. And beyond fighting, we're concerned about what's going to happen to him with his long-term health for his family. And here he is. He's back. He had one of the most dominating performances of the year in that fight against Ortega. And right now it looks like he is he is one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. And it just kind of goes to show that he was always that, Rich. He was always there. We just kind of forgot about him because he had been gone for so long. Now we're looking at maybe he goes up to fight 155. Maybe he stays at 145. But he is undoubtedly the best 145 in the world. You could even argue that he might become the best 155 in the world this time next year.
Our next award is Moment of the Year. Moment of the Year is a not necessarily have to be a moment in a fight, but something that defines MMA in 2018 outside the cage. A moment that kind of goes beyond the simple act of the fighting in the cage itself. The nominees for Moment of the Year are
Khabib jumping the cage. Matt Hughes returns to the cage. Holloway and Ortega think they should be friends. Chuck Liddell's sad interview.
Prior to the Chuck Liddell-Tito Ortiz fight for the Golden Boy MMA Show 1, Liddell gave an interview, and it was very scary. It appeared that he had some neurological damage. There was rumors of CTE issues. It really felt like Chuck should not be getting in there, and it felt extremely sad because we all had that feeling that Chuck needs the money. He has to fight. His health is failing, but he has to keep going. And it just cuts right to your soul when you see someone who you have so much admiration for, who you watched for so long and you rooted for or didn't root for, regardless, but you always respected Chuck Liddell. And to see him in that condition, to see him in that situation where he has to fight, he has to incur more damage, it just breaks your heart.
Prior to that Max Ortega fight, there's a lot of build up to it. Obviously, Ortega's the new guy. There's a lot of things going into it. And Max, like we said, put on amazing performance, really put a lot of damage on Ortega. There wasn't one moment that Ortega was winning this fight in any way. Finally finished him. And despite the violence that was showed in that cage, Max and Brian had a moment on the side that ended up going viral. Thankfully, somebody recorded this and posted it everywhere, and it went viral, where it was basically like, hey, hell of a fight. I think we should be friends. Oh, yeah. And they hugged it out, and it shows, despite all the trash talk, all the Colby Covington MAGA talk and the bus incidents and things, that this is what we really want to watch MMA for. This is why I'm so proud that this is my favorite sport. And Max Ortega was a fantastic moment.
This was one of those moments that really made you feel like you're watching professional sports. Like, this is a professional fight with professional athletes.
Also, Khabib jumping the cage has to be here as well in a nominee. As we mentioned earlier, it really was a major moment in the UFC's biggest event, and the hype just keeps continuing now. And the winner for moment of the year is
Matt Hughes returns to the cage.
This made me very happy, Nate. Here's a guy that was on death's door with an unfortunate accident with a car, trying to cross the tracks, hit by a train. We wouldn't think we'd ever see the legendary Matt Hughes, walking again or alive, unfortunately to say. And, this guy, when Country Boy Can't Survive, and he comes in and walks into the cage, I mean, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, Nate.
Absolutely not. Anybody who's been watching this sport for as long as we have, Rich, I mean, we were all huge fans of Matt Hughes. We all remember the Newton Slam, the Trigg victories, all of the huge wins he had in his career. And he was always that inspiration, that country boy can survive, that my back is against the wall, but I'm not going to let it get me down. And this was really the pinnacle of that kind of mentality, that here he was with his physical health in shambles. He fights back, he gets back in the cage, and you're right, there was not a dry eye in the house, and there probably wasn't a dry eye watching it on TV.
Our next award is Rivalry of the Year. What beef in 2018 was the hottest, the one that dominated the scene in 2018? What was that one thing? The nominees for Rivalry of the Year are
Tyron versus Colby versus Usman, Dana White versus Oscar De La Hoya, Chuck Liddell versus Tito Ortiz, Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov.
When Oscar De La Hoya decided to get into mixed martial arts, he decided to take the route by taking shots at Dana White and the UFC, by insulting them and trying to carve his niche into the market that way, saying that the UFC does not pay their fighters well, UFC does not take care of their people, Dana White does not take care of his people, and he really came out swinging. And Dana White has something to say about that when he went on UFC Unfiltered with Sarah and Norton and called Oscar De La Hoya cokehead, called him all sorts of terrible things. And this is a rivalry that I don't think is ever going to go away. When it comes to fighters, sometimes that stuff gets squashed, but when it comes to promoters like this, these guys aren't going to be having lunch anytime soon, I can tell you that.
Well, this stems all the way back to the Mayweather counterfight. When the Mayweather counterfight came into being, Oscar De La Hoya was bashing the whole event, the whole spectacle of it, until he saw how much money was involved, and now he wants to get Canelo in. He wants to kind of retcon what the negotiations were, saying that they want to get Canelo in, and there was a whole thing. So he was completely talking, completely blowing smoke, and that really sparked a rivalry that now you had the UFC coming into his realm, and now he was trying to get into the UFC's realm with the Golden Boy MMA. It ended up, that he continues, Nate. What can we say? Also, Tyron, Colby, Usman, the 170 division, the trifecta. This thing has been going on now. 2018 is really coming to a head. You got Tyron, with injury problems. Dana unsure if he should keep the belt. What's going on with him? What number one contender should he take on? Should the number one contenders fight each other? And there's been a lot of jawing back and forth on Twitter, backstages, skits. Colby's doing skits. It's just becoming this, it's almost as if you want to get all three over the cage at once to see who comes out on top. I mean, that would be a completely WWF thing, but it feels like that sometimes too.
The headlining card of the Golden Boy Promotions' first mixed martial arts show was Chuck vs. Tito, of course, and this has been this is a legendary rivalry. These two were former best friends, former training partners, absolutely hate each other now, and that just continued up to promoting this fight. Tito referencing that infamous interview that I referred to earlier with Liddell, saying that Liddell can't even finish a sentence anymore, so he's really cutting Chuck to the bone there, and Chuck saying, like, I'm going to knock him out again, make him cry again. So these two had the gloves off before they even put him on. And when they got in there, obviously it got finished the way it was. But the rivalry, it kind of brought me back 15 years, Rich, to hear them talk like this again, to see them face to face again, to hear them just going at it, no holds barred. It was very nostalgic for me, and it was pretty exciting, aside from the fact that there was that sadness to it attached.
I completely agree. It had that feel. If you didn't have that, the Chuck Liddell's interview where he didn't sound like he was all there. Take that away. Up until when they had the introductions and the old school intros and stuff, it all felt very nostalgic, and that was very cool, but unfortunately it ended how it did.
The winner of Rivalry of the Year is Conor versus Khabib. Rich, I think this was a pretty cut and dry answer for me. I mean, Conor vs. Khabib, this had been brewing for months and months, and it really came to a head there in October when they finally got in the ring. Nobody really knew what was going to happen. A lot of people had speculation both ways, but these two men genuinely hate each other.
At one time, they were very friendly. They had a lot of respect for each other coming up in the game together. But when they had to cross swords, it got very, very heated and finally culminated into, as we've mentioned before in the award show, the cage jumping, the attacks, the bus incident. I mean, we have all these things happening now that's really gone even beyond just promoting a fight for the cage. These guys hate each other. It's very clear, and it's not going to end anytime soon. That's for sure.
And our next award is Disgrace of the Year. As you can imagine, this is the most cringeworthy moment of 2018. The moment that we wish never happened. We wish we could never see it again, but it happened. Here are the nominees.
Bob Sapp versus Alderhan Shalahan. Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis. Golden Boy MMA. Mayweather versus Nasukawa.
Floyd Mayweather versus Tenshin Nasukawa.
This situation here with Rizin, they're really trying to promote Tenshin Nasukawa as their Sakuraba, basically. I mean, they're otherworldly talent that everybody could get behind. And they tried to put him up in a supposed real boxing match with Mayweather at one point. Then it was a he said, she said situation. That whole thing in general was a disgrace, even if they never fought. But the fight happened, Nate, and it ended up being one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Dana Bluen from the Asian MMA podcast, a great podcast on Asian mixed martial arts. He has some of the best insight on this fight that I have seen, saying how even though it may look like it's fixed, there are a lot of factors coming into play here. Like Mayweather was the bigger, more experienced fighter. He had the favorable rule set. Tenshin was not allowed to use his kicks that he's most famous for and probably his best weapon. And he wasn't saying that it wasn't a work, but he was just pointing out things to show that we don't really know if it was a work. But the fact that we don't know if it was fixed or not just shows you how terrible of an event this was.
Why would Rizin take their golden child that they want to put on a grand stage, even if you had no idea who any of this people, if you had no idea about anything and you're a Mayweather fan, you're going to check this out. You had more high balls on this than you would have had on a lot of other things, just simply putting this together. And if either Nasukawa takes the dive, looks horrible, or he gets beat up that bad that it looks like it could be a work. That's how bad he got beat up. It was just, however you want to spin it, however you think happened, it was a horrible look for the organization. And I hope that this doesn't ruin Nasukawa's career going forward.
Also, the Bob Sapp versus Abdurrahman and Shaolin fight. Rich, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the worst fight I've ever seen.
The worst fight I've ever seen, Nate.
By far the worst fight I've ever seen. These guys were standing there with their... granted, it wasn't the very beginning of the fight, but this fight devolved into these guys standing with their hands on their knees, panting in the ring, not even swinging at each other. And, Rich, the Japanese crowd was getting a little restless, and they don't normally get restless.
Bob Sapp has never won a fight. I mean, this feels like he's never won one. And then here's an opportunity to get early on in the fight, you thought Sapp had something. And then, just like it always happens, he gasses out. But unfortunately, Shalan had nothing left either, so he couldn't finish the fight. And the ref should have just called the fight right then. Right in the middle of it, should have stepped between them and said, fight's over, draw, no contest, or whatever.
Francis Ngannou versus Derek Lewis had some of the biggest hype of the year around it. Here we have these two monster heavyweights, both bangers, both looking to knock your head off, getting in there. This is going to be a slugfest, right? This fight sucked, Rich.
This is the fight that if you're talking with your boys over the summer, UFC, you gotta watch the Lewis Ngannou fight.
This is it, man.
You gotta
see these guys. You gotta see it. And there they are, looking at each other the whole time, having a staring contest.
These two guys had awesome highlights going into this fight. They're coming off big wins, big knockouts, looking awesome. I mean, if you remember, Ngannou had the viral uppercut against Overeem going into it.
Oh my God, remember that?
People knew about these guys, and you thought this was going to be a no question. You had guys betting the under, first round KO. You thought it was going to be a slugfest. And again, yes, one of the most boring fights of the year.
The winner, or in this case, really ultimate loser of Disgrace of the Year is...
Golden Boy MMA. I mean, there's really no question. When you see the nominees, and you saw how that event went down, with everything surrounding it, Oscar De La Cokehead, CTE, suffering Liddell, the horrendous, worst press conference in sports history, it was the worst run thing and the worst foot forward.
He was cold, Rich. He was cold.
He was cold. Yeah. Cold, but he's sweating. All right, so bottom line is, I mean, what can you say? I mean, this guy had a press conference where he didn't know half the players behind him. He was paying guys amateur contracts. It was just poorly put together, poorly run. What else can you say? Disgrace of the year by a mile, Golden Boy MMA.
Everything about this event smelled bad. Chuck getting in there, Oscar badmouth in the UFC, Oscar not even paying half of these amateur fights, obviously, paying half these guys 3-3. I mean, Rich, we can go down the street and see fights for that much money.
100%.
But this whole promotion was a complete disaster, top to bottom. I can't think of the last time I saw a show that I thought was this terrible in every way imaginable. Our next award is for Performance of the Year. Performance of the Year is really based off of who had the best single performance in a single fight on a single night. And that could be something building up to it. It could be a come from behind type situation. It could have a variety of different aspects to it. Performance of the Year award is based on the person who came up and had the best night and the biggest stage and the best showing. The nominees for Performance of the Year are
Cowboy armbarring Mike Perry in Denver. Gerard Mousasi destroying Roy McDonald in Bellator's first super fight. Amanda Nunes knocking out Chris Cyborg. Max Holloway destroying Brian Ortega.
Mousasi absolutely destroying the Red King in Bellator for the first super fight. Rich, a lot of people thought Roy was going to win this fight. In fact, I think you may have even picked Roy to win this fight. And I thought he had a really good shot. To me, this was a pick'em fight. I took Mousasi. I thought it was a coin toss. It wasn't. He just mopped the floor with Rory. And Rory's a great fighter, let's not forget. I mean, we all know about the Lawler fight. We all know about his other fights. He wasn't even in this at all.
Amanda Nunes becomes the greatest women's mixed martial artist, frankly, ever, with her destruction knockout win of Cyborg. I mean, this one, it's a no-brainer nomination for Performance of the Year. Here's a woman that is set now, has made history in the division and history in mixed martial arts, and defeating frankly, an invincible opponent. She was an underdog in this fight, looked amazing, and there's no question. Not even a win. I mean, people picking Nunes really thought her being a live dog, so to speak, as a decision win or a deep in the fight win. This was a first round destruction and an all-time highlight, Nate.
An all-time highlight. And I mean, I thought Cyborg was unstoppable. We have her as one of the top 4 scariest fighters of all time. She's on our Mount Rushmore of scariest fighters. She's just absolutely annihilating everybody, knocking them out left and right. And I thought she was going to knock out Nunes. But here she comes. I mean, Amanda Nunes just totally smashed Cyborg. I mean, just totally obliterated her.
Max Holloway, as we mentioned earlier in the award show, put on the best performance of his career, defeating the young lion Brian Ortega in handed fashion. I mean, top to bottom, Ortega had nothing in this fight, and in the end, his face was hamburger, and Max put on a fantastic performance. There's no question he deserves a nomination here.
The winner for Performance of the Year is Donald Cowboy Cerrone submitting Mike Perry in Denver.
This was an amazing moment, in MMA in 2018. You have Cowboy Cerrone, who had his back against the wall, frankly. A lot of beef with his camp, a lot of talk back and forth. And Mike Perry, the guy that really just took his spot in the gym that he helped found, is now fighting with those guys in his corner, in his hometown. He's on a losing streak. We don't know what's going to happen with Cowboy. And what happens? Destroys him with an unbelievable arm bar.
The relationship between the trainer, coach, and the fighter is one of the most intimate in all of sports, because the coach trainer knows all of the fighter's physical weaknesses, psychological flaws, knows the fighter better than the fighter knows himself in most cases, because the trainer coach is looking at it from the outside perspective. Cowboy had all the cards stacked against him. He had the perfect game plan against him. It's his coach coaching against him. It's like a parent working against you. And the level of betrayal there is just unfathomable. Here is Cowboy, dedicated himself to this gym for 10 years, helped build that gym, not just him, but helped build that gym. And here they are kicking him out the door for the next blood coming in, treating it like a puppy mill, as Cowboy said to Joe Rogan. Cowboy put his head down, and this was a real Rocky Balboa moment for him, where he got the arm bar, pulling on it, looking at the corner, that was the performance of the year.
He said he's a break it like a chicken when he take it home with him. There was no way he was going to let that go. And with that win, Cerrone set UFC records for most finishes in the promotion with 15, most wins in the promotion with 21. Okay, and there's no question that the resume leading up to the fight put this performance over the top and everything else 2018 for sure. Our next award, and this is a big one, Fight of the Year. The nominees for Fight of the Year are
Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk 2, Robert Whittaker versus Yoel Romero 2.
Thug Rose versus Joanna. You had a feeling right away that this is going to be something special. They came out right away. They had great footwork, especially Thug Rose. She was controlling the distance, cutting off the corners, engaging and retreating. There's a lot of back and forth action here. Joanna had some great leg kicks, started to take their toll by the third round. These ladies came to bang, and they were really getting after it. Something that bugs me about this fight, Rich, the referee really seemed out to lunch here for most of the fight because he missed that eye poke in the second round. There was a moment in the fourth round where Joanna had something with her top going on, and she looked at the ref, but he didn't do anything. Like, I don't know if he's checking on his girlfriend in the crowd or what he's doing, but he has to be on top of that. And luckily for her, Rose is a professional. There's that bit of female respect there, where she got to fix it.
Well, this was a rematch that Joanna got right away. Everyone initially thought the first round KO Rose had against her in their first fight was a fluke, that Rose wasn't the real champion. Joanna basically, beat herself with the weight cut. And this was Joanna's time to show that, nope, I'm here. This is my belt. But this ended up being where Rose really established herself as a true champion, showing great stand-up, improved stand-up with every fight, and she really put it on against a world-class kickboxer in Joanna Jędrzejczyk, beating her to the punch, counter-punching, showing a great game plan. And, Joanna had her moments. You could give her, maybe a third and fourth round. She really turned it on more towards the end of the fight, but it frankly wasn't enough to beat the champ, and Rose established herself in a great fight.
Absolutely a great fight, for sure.
Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis was the co-main of that Conor Khabib monumental situation. This fight had everything you want. Two dynamic, exciting fighters, creativity left and right in every facet of their games. Now finally, it's like two Tasmanian devils whirling at each other, and that's what you had here. The viral moment of a bloodied, crimson-masked Showtime standing, posted up above Tony Ferguson. He's trying to go for submissions. He's smiling with his tongue out. I mean, you can't get a more quintessential MMA moment than these two guys going at it in a great fight.
An absolutely great fight. I mean, this was a legendary fight. These guys laid it all on the line. Lots of violence, lots of blood, lots of class, though. These guys don't hate each other. It's just business. And,
Tony established himself with that, with that win to be still in that mix, that logjam that we keep talking about. Hopefully, this win can get him that title shot that he's been searching for against Khabib. Robert Whittaker against Yoel Romero, their rematch. Again, not for the title here. Yoel Romero did not make weight in this fight, Nate, but nevertheless came to play, and by the third round, it was a slobber knocker.
This fight, like you said, it was a little bit of a slow starter compared to the other ones, but, I mean, the third, fourth, and fifth rounds, you can't ask for any more than that. Both show tremendous heart, and we have a split decision here. Rich, I'm going to be right up front about this. I think this whole fight is an indictment on the UFC scoring policy. I think Yoel won this fight hands down. Yoel had him almost finished 4 or 5 times, and he was never in trouble once. So this whole 10-point must system, UFC scoring system, really did Yoel a disservice. And I think if you showed 10 people that fight who don't know the UFC scoring rules, 9 of them would say Yoel won that fight.
This fight here, Whittaker-Romero, it's not an indictment on the scoring system. It's an indictment on the application of that scoring system. They made it very clear that they adopted the new MMA rules, which included a more refined, better scoring criteria that included situations where you could have 7 points, 8 points. There was a lot more flexibility in how you gave and took away points, and the criteria is much more robust. Clearly, the judges weren't up to speed on this new criteria because it felt like they were still scoring it like the 10-point must system. You had a Whittaker where Whittaker was landing more punches and being more consistently better, but the biggest, hardest, most damaging shots, and like you said, he had Bobby Knuckles hurt multiple times in this fight where Knuckles didn't have much for Romero in that way. He was tagging him up. No question. But the bottom line is, it's how much do you give Whittaker for the ring generalship and the cumulative striking versus how much do you weight Romero and his devastating shots. My only real big issue, and why I take this down a little bit with the other ones, making it second place, in my opinion, here amongst these 4 fights, is that it wasn't for the title. If Romero was going into that 5th round with the title on the line, that would have really put it over the top in my mind. But the fact of the matter is, even if Yoel won the fight, he still couldn't get the belt because he could not make weight, a problem this guy continues to have, and it's unfortunate. But you are right. You look at a fight, you ask 10 people, 7 or 8 of them probably going to give it to Romero on those big punches and those big strikes. And yeah, I tend to agree with you there as well. And the winner for fight of the year is
Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje.
This is the fight of the year. I mean, no question about it, Nate. What a war between these two exciting lightweights. An amazing situation here, Nate.
This was an incredible fight. A fight of the ages. You could argue this could even become fight of the decade at some point. Gaethje brought his classic leg kicks. Poirier was limping early on, and Poirier was showing incredible hands and landed tremendous headshots. DC had a great comment between the first and second rounds where he said a great coach motivates the fighter, and when Gaethje asked who won the first round, they said, who cares? You're going to get him in the end anyway. And after that, Gaethje looked like he got this big wind, and he took over the second and third rounds, I thought.
These guys both hurt each other multiple times in this fight. I mean, Poirier with the switching of the stances, going to the body. Gaethje with his leaning forward with the leg kicks and the precision. Gaethje looked like a mess after the end of this fight. And really, there were some eye pokes going on here, and that really was the turning point. Gaethje got a point taken away with the eye poke, gave Poirier a little time to rest, and that really changed things. The momentum kind of swung back at that point, and Poirier finally finished it. It was an unbelievable back and forth battle. There's no question to me, this is the best fight of the year.
Absolutely. And after the second round, Poirier looked really hurt. He had a hard time getting back to his corner. It's not very often where you see a fighter at this level looking that hurt between rounds. The stoppage, the stoppage was really tough. I don't know if I can call it an early stoppage. I got to say it's a little controversial, though. I don't think Gaethje was completely finished. I think he could have could have gone about 5 more seconds. I thought he was trying to go back to the wrestling. Maybe he wasn't succeeding at that. Maybe he would have been out cold. But I think Herb could let that go in about 5 more seconds. I think Gaethje may have won that fight.
No, I think Gaethje was already getting beat up pretty bad. He was taking a lot of damage going into it. I mean, both guys were, and he was taking some hellacious shots at the end there. I mean, Gaethje's the type of guy, he's one of those guys that you really have to absolutely kill out there. I mean, he's just never going to shut off. And Herb's doing the right thing, I feel. I do like the stoppage myself. Poirier won a fantastic match. I mean, he's in the talks for top 4 lightweight pseudo tournament, so to speak. He's definitely has a case to be one of the guys who's going to fight for the title or have that number 1 contendership for sure. And Gaethje's not going anywhere. Gaethje's talking about fighting Ally Quinta. I would love to see that fight. That would be a very exciting fight.
And regardless of how I feel about the stoppage, Dustin Poirier deserves a victory. He did an outstanding job, not taking anything away from the diamond.
Our next award is a special one. It's our Silver Heart Award. What this is a fighter that showed incredible heart. A type of warrior that has to go out on his shield, that almost has to be protected from himself. The type of guy that's bulletproof. An incredible display of fortitude and heart is what we're looking for here. The nominees for the Silver Heart Award are
Dan Hooker, Darren Elkins, Justin Gaethje, Brian Ortega.
Dan the Hangman Hooker.
Coming out of City Boxing, this guy, again, part of that stable, looking great. Dan Hooker, having already won 2 fights in 2018 against Jim Miller and Gilbert Burns, goes up against possibly the best kicker in the sport, in Edson Barboza. Basically took baseball bats all over his face over the course of 3 rounds, ending in a KO to the punch to the body.
After this fight was over, people were saying that Hooker's corner should have thrown in the towel. Dana White said that corners need to become better about this. This fight really opened the eyes of the mixed martial arts community that the culture has to change when it comes to corners throwing in the towel. It's been happening in boxing for decades now, but it just doesn't happen like it should anyways in mixed martial arts. This fight brought that to the forefront, so it just shows you right there the incredible amount of punishment that Hooker took before this fight ended. Our next nominee is Darren Elkins. Darren Elkins took tremendous leg shots again and again from Ricardo Lamas. The calf kicks he was taking again and again. You could see he was limping for a long time. You could see he was in tremendous pain. Darren Elkins hadn't been finished in 5 years, and you could tell by the way he was fighting Lamas. I mean, he kept going and going, and I thought this fight could have been stopped in the second round. I thought the corner could have thrown in the towel in the second or earlier third round. They decided not to. Elkins was finished by Lamas, but that does not take away from the tremendous heart he showed.
At no point was Elkins in this fight, winning this fight at all, but, the bully, needed this. He had his back against the wall, the bully. I mean, Elkins wasn't finished in, however many years. Lamas was on a losing streak. We're talking about a situation where, this guy fighting for the title at one point against Jose Aldo, he was looking at facing 3 losses in a row, and that's usually the death nail in UFC, especially nowadays. And Lamas showed up in one of his best performances and really took Elkins to task. And like you said, this could have been stopped earlier, and I would have had no problem. Unfortunately or fortunately, it did, and we got to see once again the damage. Take the damage and stay in it.
Our next nominee is Justin Gaethje. Going right back to what we just talked about with the Dustin Poirier fight, Justin Gaethje showed incredible heart. He took incredible amount of punishment. Like you said before, Gaethje is someone that you have to kill. He is one of the hardest people to stop in the entire sport. And you got to see it right there. I mean, the punishment he took from Poirier cannot go unnoticed. I mean, the heart he showed in that fight was incredible.
And the winner of the 2018 Silver Heart Award is Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega showed up with the wind at his back. He was the next guy. He was going to take on Max Holloway. He was going to put Max Holloway away. Max Holloway shouldn't even be fighting anymore. This is Brian Ortega's division now. He's choking everybody out. He just uppercutted the legend in Frankie Edgar. Finished him. He's never been finished before. No one would have thought what happened. With Max Holloway showing one of the, like we said earlier, one of the best performances of his career, dominating Ortega, but Ortega never went away, bud. He never went away, showing incredible heart throughout this matchup.
Yeah, this fight was complete and total destruction of Brian Ortega. He took shot after shot after shot, and Holloway has a gas tank that never empties out. He just kept hitting him, and Ortega took it all. This fight was stopped by a doctor stoppage. This fight would probably still be going if it didn't get stopped.
The nominees for Submission of the Year are
Sabit Magomed via Sulev stretch over Brandon Davis. Paul Craig via triangle versus Magomed Ankalaev. Ryan Hall via heel hook versus BJ Penn. Alexei Olenek via Ezekiel choke versus Junior Albini.
Zabit Magomed submitting Brandon Davis via Sulev stretch. Rich, this is one of the most amazing submissions you'll ever see.
Meanwhile, 2 of them happened in the same night, Nate. Let's give a quick shout out to Aljamain Sterling and Stamann, who did it earlier in the fight, earlier in the event with his own Sulev stretch. No one has seen anybody pull this off in MMA. Meanwhile, it happens twice in the same night, more impressively by Sabit. Amazing.
Our next nomination is Ryan Hall submitting BJ Penn via heel hook. We just saw this one about a week and a half ago, and I mean, Ryan Hall's an incredible submission fighter. We know that. But, I mean, BJ Penn is known as a great submission fighter. He didn't even look close to Ryan Hall on the mat here. And we know BJ Penn is 39 years old. He's at the end of his career. But this was the first submission loss of his career, and Ryan Hall just totally worked him with it.
I mean, how long was the fight, Nate? 50 seconds? I mean, how long was it?
Right? I think it was like 5 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but I mean, let's give credit where credit is due. Ryan Hall, very slick with the rolling heel hook. I mean, very, very slick. I mean, he's going to get a lot of guys in it. Cleanly done and unbelievably quick. And you got to give it to Ryan Hall for sure.
Something that is worth noting here is that I saw a report saying that BJ Penn was training his jiu-jitsu really hard for this fight so that this was not going to happen to him. So this isn't a BJ Penn going in there looking to slug. He may have wanted that fight, but he was well prepared for this submission fighting, and he didn't even have a chance. And that's BJ Penn we're talking about.
Ryan Hall was so quick to that ankle, it was amazing. Alexei Olenek defeated Junior Albini by Ezekiel choke. And for me, when you look at the winner versus this one, this was very tough. Because there's not too many times you see guys get submitted from the bottom. And you saw it here. Junior Albini didn't have the diaper on this time. He had regular shorts on. Good for him. He's in half guard on top.
I like that diaper.
He got the diaper. Olenek is, being half mounted. He's got and he ends up wrapping up an Ezekiel choke. Junior Albini lets his arms get wrapped up with the neck, ends up getting submitted from the bottom, which was an amazing situation. And you saw the disgust on Albini's face. You can't believe it, because that doesn't happen anymore in contemporary MMA. It just simply doesn't. And it was an amazing technical submission and fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, of all the fights we've seen in our lives, Rich, I can count on one hand how many times I've seen someone submit somebody from their back. And the fact that the person submitted, like in this day and age, it just seems surreal. It seems like we turned it back to like 1997 or something.
100%. And the winner for submission of the year is
Paul Craig via triangle choke on Magomed Ankalaev.
This was an incredible situation here. He was going to lose this fight, Nate, and pulls one out of the fire with an amazing choke with seconds remaining. Amazing submission.
And if you go and look at technique from all these other fights, this may not be the most amazing technical submission compared to the Sulawev stretch, compared to the Ezekiel choke from your back, from that amazing rolling heel hook. But Rich, he submitted this guy with 1 second left in the fight. And to me, something that separates it is that this guy would have lost this fight. I mean, this fight was lost. Paul Craig lost. And then he submits him with 1 second left. I don't know if I've ever seen a fight end with 1 second left by submission where the guy was going to lose. I don't think I've ever seen that in my entire life. So to me, just that fact makes this an easy decision, in my opinion.
100%. Yeah, we debated this one for a little while, Nate. I mean, the Ezekiel choke versus that triangle, but you really have to give it to Paul Craig. Just like you said, he was going to lose that fight, and with a second left, the how in danger does Ankalaev have to be in to have to tap? He has to know the time. You could even go out, and the bell's gonna ring, and he could get up. He could pull a Matt Hughes, Carlos Newton, and be like, "Where am I? Oh, I won." That he probably wouldn't even known. Okay. Fact of the matter is, the squeeze that Craig must have had to put him in that danger, to be able to tap him with 1 second to go. It has to be a vice grip. It has to be very, very dangerous. 100%. No question. A well-deserved submission of the year.
On to our next category, and one of my favorite categories, Knockout of the Year. Your nominees for Knockout of the Year are
Yair Rodriguez versus Korean Zombie, Amanda Nunes versus Chris Cyborg, Brian Ortega versus Frankie Edgar, Myas Mule versus Edward Kelly.
Myas Mule versus Edward Kelly. Rich, I've never seen someone fall like Myas Mule fell in this fight. I mean, he looked like he got killed in like an old school Nintendo game, like he was on Contra, like falling off the screen or something.
It was just like when you fight Double Dragon and you knock the guy over, and it's like, oh, and they kind of flatten out. Like he was like planking in the air and he fell straight down. I mean, that you never see that. Very devastating, viral knockout. A great highlight for ONE FC. It was fantastic. A great knockout for sure. Nunes Cyborg. I mean, what can you say? Of course, Nunes Cyborg is going to be on this nominations list, Nate. You're talking about a devastating destruction of one of the scariest human beings walking the earth, the invincible Cyborg. She wins 2 belts. She's the GOAT. She's the champ, and all in devastating first round fashion. Completely dominated her. And you know what, Nunes, she said on the Unfiltered podcast, basically the game plan was, hey, we're gonna put some leather on her, and she's gonna get mad and charge. And that's exactly what Nunes executed. Cyborg took a couple shots and thought, hey, I'm not going to get hurt. I'm Cyborg, and ended up taking a lot more, and those hurt, Nate. Big time blows, overhand lefts and rights, took her right out.
Our next nomination is Brian Ortega versus Frankie Edgar.
Oh, man.
Rich, for me, this was really the fight that really put Ortega on the map in my eyes, because I thought Edgar was going to win this fight. I mean, it's Frankie Edgar. We all know Frankie Edgar. We all know about his fights with Gray Maynard, BJ Penn, on down the list. Frankie Edgar, Rich, one of Trading Blows' all-time favorite fighters right here, Frankie Edgar.
Oh, 100%.
And I mean, Brian Ortega just wasted him. I mean, just totally obliterated him.
He was the first man ever to finish the answer, Frankie Edgar. The first man ever to do it. I mean, that's all you got to say. In like a dragon uppercut, devastating. I mean, a no doubter, a home run, and showed the incredible power of Ortega. What can you say about it? I mean, an iconic win, an all-time win for Ortega, and a clear nominee for KO of the year.
This knockout win by Ortega over Edgar was really the main reason why I took him to beat, why I picked him to beat Max Holloway, because it showed me that not only is Brian Ortega an incredible submission fighter, which submission fighting is really his base, but this really showed where his hands were. It showed that he has hands just as good as anybody in the sport. So this was really the fight that, to me, elevated him to that world-class top-of-the-line fighter status.
And the winner for Knockout of the Year is Yair Rodriguez against the Korean Zombie, the Hellbow, the special move. I mean, this, you've never seen this before. I've never seen this before. Up piston elbow right to his jaw, knocking out Korean Zombie. And you didn't know at that point, who was winning that fight. It was in doubt. And Yair, with an incredible knockout. I mean, he was so quick. If you didn't have a replay, you almost wouldn't even know what happened there. And it was, just the awareness, the precision. It was amazing, Nate.
It was amazing, and I didn't know what happened when it first happened. I'm like, oh my god, it was like a headbutt. Like, did they clash heads? I mean, I don't know what happened. And like you said, without replay, we'd still be wondering what happened. And some people said that this was a fluke. I totally disagree with that because this was calculated, Rich. I mean, like this wasn't like a flailing thing. I mean, like he threw that elbow with the intention of hitting him, and he did. I mean, I don't see how that's a fluke. I mean, and there's Zombie, and Rich, I'll be honest, I thought Zombie was winning this fight, and there he was, face down, palms up, with like 5 seconds left.
Exactly it. And, Yair, he's a creative guy. He brings different things to fights, especially striking. So to say it's a fluke with a guy like Yair and the creativity he brings, that's a false statement.
You're also not giving Yair enough credit here because, like you said, he's always been known as being a very creative striker. The guy throws a kitchen sink at you. And something else to take to note here is that this was really a big resurgence for Rodriguez because he was kind of on the outs a little bit. I mean, I thought Zombie's was going to win this fight, and an extremely close fight. I mean, even if I have Zombie edging it a little bit, very close fight. And Rodriguez, I mean, he fought great the whole time, but this was an incredible knockout at the end for sure.
And here we go, Nate. Here's the big one. All right?
Here is our final award of the year.
Fighter of the Year. The nominees for Fighter of the Year are
Khabib Nurmagomedov,
There's the tag! Still undisputed! Khabib Nurmagomedov has finished Conor McGregor tonight!
Daniel Cormier,
Daniel Cormier is the UFC heavyweight champion!
Oh man, that is history, ladies and gentlemen. You'll never see it again.
Michael Chandler,
And now the new and 3-time Bellator lightweight world champion, Iron Michael Chandler.
16th career win, 3rd time. That belt has been put around his waist.
Amanda Nunes,
Khabib Nurmagomedov. Rich, what can you say? I mean, this was the year where Khabib became an immortal. Khabib won the biggest fight, won the most watched fight in MMA history.
still undefeated.
Still undefeated, beat the most famous fighter in the world in Conor McGregor. Maybe not the most liked fighter in the world, but you can't argue that there's a bigger mixed martial artist right now than Conor.
No.
And Khabib just totally mauled him. I mean, Conor, you could say maybe he won that 3rd round. I don't know. But I mean, he was never really in this fight until maybe parts of that 3rd round.
Bottom line is, he won the biggest match of his life, one of the biggest matches in UFC, won the title with all those circumstances surrounding it, Nate, the bus incident. Many other guys would have, not want to fight that night. I mean, not take a guy on short notice or whatever. I mean, he'd had every right to with what happened there. But Khabib's not that kind of guy. And ended up fighting a very game ally, Quinta. And yes, not the best name to have as a title fight for your reign, but it wasn't his fault. Not his fault at all with everything that surrounded that fight. And he got it done with all of that crap. And then to go on and beat Conor in the way he did, there's no question he's nomination of the year.
Our next nominee, Amanda Nunes. What else can we say about Amanda here, Rich? I mean, she beat Cyborg. She totally smashed her. I thought Cyborg was unbeatable at the 145-pound division. We didn't know if there's even going to be a 145-pound division anymore because there's nobody else who wants to even fight Cyborg. I mean, that was the gulf between the champ and the rest of the division, it seemed. It seemed like there's nobody else even there. Like, who can she even fight next? Like, what are we going to do?
No one wants to fight her.
No one wants to fight her.
No one wants to fight her, Nate.
You have, like, people changing weight classes to get away from her. You got people cutting weight to avoid her. Like, whatever it takes, just don't make me fight her kind of thing. And here comes Amanda Nunes. She's not afraid. She comes in, she knocks her teeth out, knocks her out cold.
Amazing situation. Becomes a champ. The first woman ever to do it. And think about what she's done. I mean, like, not necessarily all this year, right? But think about, the fighters she's defeated. Obviously, Cyborg. Ronda Rousey, she entered that reign. Miesha Tate. She's beat big women in her division. And now the 145 division. And she could be the first fighter to really defend both belts. I mean, that's not out of the ordinary. I mean, they can't find anybody to fight 145 pound anyway. So what? Defend that and defend 135. I mean, it's all out there for her. An amazing performance and solidified her as the best, for sure.
And you could argue right now that Amanda Nunes might be a top 10 all-time mixed martial artist. And I'm not saying women's mixed martial artists. I'm saying all-time men or women mixed martial artists. Because I hate these.
No question about it.
I hate these gender-specific awards, Rich. I'll tell you that right now. I hate this female fighter of the year, male fighter of the year. No, you're not giving women enough credit with those kinds of awards. Fighter of the year is male or female. They both deserve the same amount of respect and recognition. Not saying that anyone's trying to disrespect them, but in my eyes, you are marginalizing this and by separating it by gender.
They're all fighters, bottom line. And we say fighter of the year, it's fighter of the year, and they're all fighters. That's all there is to it.
Because then what do you have next? Female submission of the year? Female knockout of the year? That's not fair to them.
Completely agree. We also have DC, Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier had a record-setting performance in his own right, being the only man to defend a belt in 2 different weight classes in the same year. He defeated Volkan Oezdemir for the vacated light heavyweight belt earlier in 2018, January. Beat Stipe when he moved up to heavyweight, and destroyed him in the first round in an incredible performance by DC, no question about it. Went on to fight Derek Lewis in Madison Square Garden. Defeated him in the second round by submission, defending his heavyweight belt.
Cormier had an incredible year. He had multiple wins. First champ to ever defend both belts. The big win against Stipe, like you said, and he really solidified himself as an immortal in the sport. Not that he wasn't before, but there's no question he belongs there now.
And the winner for Fighter of the Year 2018 is Michael Iron Chandler, Bellator lightweight champion. This guy has done it all in 2018. Okay, here's a man, like we mentioned before in the comeback segment, has back against the wall. Embarrassing, fluky loss to close 2017. And a lot of other guys would have waited for the rematch against Primus. But Primus got hurt. And Michael Chandler, being the kind of guy that he is, Nate, decided, you know what? I'm not waiting. And proceeded to win 3 times in a row, getting his belt back, setting a laundry list of records.
Well, because like you said, Rich, he suffered this embarrassing fluky injury at Madison Square Garden in the world's most famous arena. And these things can kind of get in your head. These things can mess with your psyche because he didn't do anything to cause this injury, but it still happened. So it does get in your head as, I work so hard, but then this takes it away from me. So it does, demoralize you to some extent, but that didn't stop him. He came back, and like you said, he didn't sit out waiting for another fight like we see so many top guys do. He went in there and fought because he's a fighter, and he got it done. And then, as we know, he went on and beat Primus. Here he is, the champion, and he set a ton of records. Rich, you want to get into that?
With that win against Brett Primus, retaining his belt for a 3rd time. Important to note here, most finishes in Bellator history with 11. Most title reigns in Bellator history with 3, which is record-setting, and the only man to do this outside of Randy the Natural Couture in MMA history, regardless of division, period. Most title bouts in Bellator history with 10, tied with Patricio Fury for most wins in Bellator history at 16, tied with Layla Lee McFarland and Neiman Gracie for most submission wins in Bellator history with 6. This all happened in 2018 for Michael Iron Chandler. I mean, it's just amazing to me how many records this man has set, and a shame that we're not going to be able to see him against the top 5 guys in the UFC. I would love to see this. He is our 2018 Fighter of the Year.
Well, Rich, that concludes our awards show, and I'm really excited for the new year. I'm really excited for what we have coming up. We have episode 12 coming up next week. We have Kevin Randleman coming up at the end of the month. We have some more TB Fighter profiles coming to you later on this year. There's a lot in store. There's a lot ahead for us and a lot ahead for the sport, so I can't be more excited.
We'd love to hear what you have to say about these awards, man. What our nominees, our winners. Please, join the conversation on Facebook, our Facebook group, the Trading Blows Podcast, at TBMMA Pod on Twitter, on Instagram at Trading Blows. We also have our YouTube page where we're archiving a lot of our content, and that's the Trading Blows Podcast as well. So please, the conversation's everywhere. Please join us. I hope you're there next week. While we talk about the ESPN card coming up. It's going to be fantastic. We'll hope you're there. Thanks for joining us for the first annual 2018 Trading Blows Awards.
Please subscribe, rate, and review, and we'll see you next week.